Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nikon Creators Hour. I am your host, Mike Corrado. I've been with Nikon for over 35 years, and I've been taking pictures for over 40 years. And we bring you these amazing interviews with these epic photographers we have to inspire you and educate you. And today on the Creators Hour, we have Charmi Peña, Nikon Ambassador. Charmi, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
It's so good to see you, and thank you for getting up early with us this morning. And even more thanks for putting together a nice collection of images for us. But I want to start off by asking you, how are you? How's your family? How's everybody doing?
We're good. The kids are great. I know a lot of people are stressed about having their kids home and whether they're falling behind or whatever. My kids are thriving in quarantine. They taught themselves to ride bikes, and they're having the greatest time. So that's, the kids are good. I am starting to get back into weddings. In New Jersey, things are a little bit chiller now. And so there are some smaller ceremonies happening. I've definitely already learned a lot about how shooting in a pandemic is different than shooting not in a pandemic. So definitely there's some new safety protocols to work into my workflow and how I work and what I do. But it's good. It's good to start getting back out there.
That is good. And I think that's so important that you bring that up, because you had mentioned to me earlier in another conversation that, you are working your way back in, and there's all kinds of safety measures that have to happen. And, not everybody around you is going to, sort of get in line with what, has to happen, but you got to protect yourself. And that's an important thing. I want to kind of challenge you to remind us all of how you and I met and where we met.
Well, when I started using a particular flash system, like the newest radio Nikon flash system, I had JC Carey, who was my rep at the time, come and help me learn it. And he was very generous with his time, and he came and helped me learn it. And then we were at a conference, and JC introduced me to you. And I don't know if you remember, but you were in a hurry. You were like,
ding, ding, ding. Yeah. I'm a busy guy,
Very nice to meet you. I have to go.
But we did stop and we talked later. Right?
Yes.
So it was at a conference, and then I watched your program, and I was totally blown away by your work. And fast forward to now, relationship several years in, and you're a Nikon ambassador. And again, working with you on different assignments is pretty amazing. Everything you deliver. So thank you for all that. I'd love to kind of get into the history of where people start. So let's get started with where you got started. Think about that first time you ever picked up a camera, and tell us a little bit about the journey from the first time you started taking pictures to getting more involved in it to now running a hugely successful business specializing in Indian weddings.
So my photos will also help tell this story a little bit. But when I got married 14 years ago, my husband got me a little starter DSLR, and I shoved it in the back of my closet. I was totally intimidated by it. I just thought, like, if a point and shoot works, and then, like, why would I use this in automatic? I don't know how to use it. So I just put it in the back of my closet and ignored it. And at the time, I have 2 degrees in economics and information technology. And so I was kind of job hunting. But I guess I was just the biggest pain in the butt who was really bad at being home and doing nothing. So I was bored. And so I decided to pick up the camera and figure out how to use it. And I started with literally learning how to use it by, when you're in the car and you shoot yourself in the rear view mirror while everything is moving. I thought that was like the coolest revelation that you could do that. And then
okay, just for the record, I've never done that. But
you've never done that? Okay.
No.
I feel like I make everyone do that. I'm like, this is an exercise that you have to do. I started just shooting like rocks and plants in my house and anything. And actually my first image that you'll see is my friend's son, and I photographed him, and now he's like 13 years old. And he was a baby, and it just kind of took off from there. I didn't mean to become a photographer. I literally just stumbled into it, you know, from shooting rocks to shooting a friend's baby to shooting her friend's kids to a wedding.
That's amazing. And it sounds to me like you're self-taught. Did you go to school at all for this, or you taught yourself?
I taught myself. Yeah. I would say there's definitely still education that happened because I did go to a couple. I was not a big workshop attender, but funny enough, the first workshop I ever attended was also 14 years ago, and it was Cliff Montner's.
Nikon Ambassador Cliff. We gave a shout out to Cliff. Do you think he's going to be happy about that?
I don't know.
I think he'll be happy. Yeah.
He'll be happy.
That's very, very cool. Was it a good workshop though? Was it any good?
It was good. It was good. It's how I learned to use flash before I ever shot a wedding, which I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I feel like most people go in like kind of stressed out about that, but I went in like really confident.
Yeah, Cliff is an extraordinary wedding photographer, former journalist, photojournalist. Well, while you brought up the pictures, we might as well get to those now. And was it a difficult thing to ask you to sort of cull down your career into a small little group of images?
Yes. It was really hard. And I was trying really hard not to pick like just my favorite ones, but more the ones that help change the trajectory of my career, or the ones that change the trajectory of my work, or just change something in me when I took it.
That's amazing, because a lot of photographers I've interviewed, you know, through these Creators Hour interviews, said the same thing. It wasn't about the best pictures they've ever taken. It's the ones that meant the most to them during a certain time during their journey. So let me launch the first picture, because you mentioned that is a big part of your story.
Yeah.
And let's get this going full screen so everybody can see it. So don't hold back. Everything it takes to kind of get to this image, maybe the focal length you chose, a little bit of technical, but more so the backstory and how this image came about.
Okay. I mean, I'd have to dig it up to know the focal length, but I can tell you that this was definitely taken early. So I would bet money that it's a nifty 50. Because in the beginning, all I had was a 24-70 and a nifty 50. But this was, you know, at the time, I didn't even call myself a photographer. I was just, you know, like I said, I was shooting rocks and plants and anything inanimate that I could get my hands on. Maybe a self-portrait here and there. But I went to go visit my friend, and she had just had her first baby. I had just gotten married, and he was such a sweet child. He didn't need his mom to be around. He took to me right away. And so I took him upstairs. I found some window light, and this is the first human being that I actually like photographed intentionally. Are there things I would change about this? There 100% are things I would change about this, but just, you know, working with a sweet baby and natural light at the time, like this photo ended up being on my business cards for 2 years. It was
so going back to that shoot, I want you to talk a little bit about what were you learning along the way at that point? What were you discovering? What were some of the challenges? I mean, a lot of people tuning in may want to know what it's like when you first ramp up to start to do this more seriously, especially for business. But what did you learn during this time?
So there was one technical thing and one business thing that were really big at the time. The one technical thing is that I think when you're like a really, really new photographer, especially when you get your hands on something like the 51.8, you think you have to shoot at 1.8 all the time.
Right.
And so his images, I'm nearly positive every single one of them is shot at 1.8. And I think that's something like everyone has to go through until they realize, oh, I want both eyes in focus. And so I think that's just part of the process, is that when you first learn that 1.8, you know, you're making those connections in your brain where you're like, oh, 1.8 means my photos won't look like a snapshot. But then you don't realize yet that like 2.5 can also look like it's not a snapshot. And in the beginning, it's very all or nothing. It's like, well, I can either take it with a little iPhone or whatever, and that'll look like a snapshot, or I can take it with my real camera at 1.8, and that will look. And I think that in the beginning, you don't really have that middle ground, or that sense that you have options.
Gotcha.
And so definitely then I was still learning. I was still so like excited by shooting wide open that I didn't think to try anything else.
With a beautiful subject like that, how do you go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it still worked out, but but definitely a lesson to be learned for me. And then the second thing was, it was, like I said, super early on in my business, and this is the photo that I used to like promote my business. And the first time one of her friends called me, I was completely unprepared with pricing. I just couldn't figure out why anybody wanted to give me money in the first place to take a picture. Because in the beginning you're just so in love that you're like, oh, but it's my passion and I love it. But I've always been very business minded. And so I wasn't prepared when she contacted me, but I got prepared really fast. And so, I'll say, while building your portfolio is definitely a sensitive time, it's still a time that you should think to be compensated for your work, and that, you know, whether you're giving people amateur memories or professional memories, those are still really valuable. And so it's important to you know, give yourself that value and make sure you're charging something for your work.
Well, there's no doubt the importance of the images, especially when a child grows up. And you know, you said that you took this quite a while ago, so you know, everything changes, so these pictures become even that much more valuable.
Right.
So as we move on, let's just keep talking about your career. What does this picture mean to you? Who's in the photo? Tell us all about it.
This is my very first bride. She is still one of my favorite human beings. She actually picked up a camera herself, and she just photographs her kids, but she's so good. But this was also probably like 12 or 13 years ago, because it was my very first wedding. Her name's Kaylin. I had never photographed adults or couple before. I had only been photographing children for a couple months, and I had photographed her friends' twin babies. If you saw these twin newborn photos now, you would think, wow, she did just start yesterday. And I had just started. I wasn't experienced. And she saw the newborn photos and saw some potential in me that I didn't even know existed. And she called me and insisted that I shoot her wedding. And I was like, I can't shoot your wedding. I don't know how to shoot a wedding. And so she was very persistent, and she's like, well, come to my house and at least shoot an engagement session for me. And that got me really, like, I was scared of weddings, but an engagement session sounded really, really fun to me. So I did it, and I did it for very little money because I was just so, you know, excited to do it. I just wanted to make sure I was like compensated for my time a little bit. And I gave her wedding pricing that I thought she would never. She's like, she knows this is my first wedding. There's no way she's going to pay me. That's ridiculous. So I went and I photographed this engagement session. This photo became the next photo that was on my business card for 2 years. And the front of my website and everything. And I shot the engagement session, went home, edited it the same day, delivered the photos the same day. Her planner told her she shouldn't hire me for her wedding because she thought it was weird that I delivered the photos in one day. And she fired her planner and she hired me. And then her wedding was published in the Knot.
See, and this is all great too, because I think it'll give a lot of people confidence to understand there's always stepping stones, right? You're growing with this. So at this point in your career, you're being kind of pushed into the business side. You don't really understand the value of your photo, but you do now. Do you start to study business here? Do you start to say to yourself, you know, do I talk to other photographers about how I start to invoice? Because like you said, you don't even know what to charge at this point as you're moving forward. How do you progress to move forward as a better businesswoman?
So I think luckily I did have an economics and finance background a little bit. And so that helped me, you know, I always knew I was well-versed in like supply and demand and being competitive. But I think I never was able to take a business course in photography that helped me. I did a lot through guesswork. Mm-hmm. And so I remember calculating how much the wedding would cost me to photograph. And then I remember calculating how much her album would cost me to produce, and like figuring out how I could make money. But also, I think early on, I always, and this is something for new photographers, especially to remember, a lot of people will tell you, take your cost of goods and just multiply it by 3. And that's not necessarily a great idea, because if you, for example, are producing an album and you make a mistake, you have to replace the whole album, and now you made no money. So I thought about all those things, and I did start, really getting into the weeds with pricing at this. This is definitely where that started, but yeah, I didn't have any formal education about it. I wish I did. There are some, actually, I'd love to teach about that. I love talking about money and finances and business stuff. So that's something I should think about. Thanks, Mike.
But along the way, marketing, right? You had to figure out your marketing. You had to change out other business cards. Like you mentioned before, you started a website. So all of this is part of the building blocks of trying to get that business together. And this is great. I love this. I feel like I'm on a journey through Charmi Peña's world thus far. And let's just kind of keep going.
That photo, the last photo, I built.
This one?
Yeah, I built an HTML website by myself. For it wasn't the greatest, but I still have a picture of it. But it was that long ago that it was an HTML website that I programmed myself.
Yeah, my programming capabilities were waiting for them to come along with programming where you could drop and drag photos, and then you type in your name and it builds the website yourself. Until I realized that there are better people at that than I am. But this is awesome. I mean, again, moving forward. Now, I know who this is, but let's fill in everybody about this picture. Why are you putting it in this sort of collection of images that you're talking about? What's the backstory here?
So this is my husband. Isn't he the most handsome? He looks like a rock star here.
I said it before when we first got connected that I saw this picture, and yes, he is totally handsome.
So this photo, when I was going through the images, there's literally nothing technically, I mean, this was shot with a 50 at 1.8, 100%. I already know, but, there's nothing career changing about it. It's more just, this photo wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him, and not because he's in it. He's the one who pushed me to do all of this. Whenever I lacked self-confidence, what's really worked in my world really well is that I have this really incredible support system. And he's definitely at the top of that, where when I was like, no, I'm never going to shoot a wedding ever, I don't want to. He came to the engagement session with me. And then he would come to weddings with me, and he doesn't care about photography. That's not his thing, right? He has stuff he's very passionate about. And it's weird stuff like tech orgs and how to organize a tech org. And I don't care about any of it. But maybe it's not weird to another tech org or person, right? I mean, right. It's perfect for him. Sure. But my point is, like, he does not, what I do is not his passion, but he showed up at every wedding I shot and carried my bags. And then he learned to second shoot for me. And this year will be the first year that he's not working with me anymore. And that's literally just because, like, our kids are getting older and somebody needs to be home on the weekend. But yeah, I mean, he's like the moral support at home and at work, and he's amazing. And I think it shouldn't be underestimated or understated that, the support of parents or family members or a husband or wife, or the kids, I mean, it's critical for your success, because you don't have that extra pressure of having to explain it all, right? I mean, to have that kind of support is a great thing. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, he's going to be online, and he's going to hear all these nice things I said about him, isn't he? Is that a good thing? Yeah, I would think so. Well, it's nice. It's nice that we gave him some props. So
fast forward now, because now it looks like we're really truly getting into the core of your wedding photography here. And what do we got going on with this picture? And I do want you to address something that I know about you, and maybe it's changed through the years, that you were a prime lens girl and now you may be using more zooms. Talk a little bit about what you're doing to prepare for a wedding and all of this, as well as the picture itself, and what advice you give to people on what it is you're carrying around on any given wedding day.
So I'm staying open-minded on the longer lens thing. I think partially because we're learning to shoot in a pandemic where distance is going to be important, but also because new technology is always worth considering. So while I'm staying open-minded, currently my bag is still all primes. In my bag, I keep a 24, a 35, a 50, an 85, a 105, 1.4, which is a dream lens,
Yep.
and a 45 tilt shift.
And are you running just a couple of bodies on you? You're hanging a couple of bodies off you with 2 lenses at a time? Are you doing constant swaps with one body? What are you doing?
2 Z6s at all times. I have really fallen head over heels for mirrorless. So 2 Z6s at all times. And usually it's 35-85. I have all those other lenses just in case, but I would say I shoot 98% of a day with a 35 and an 85. Probably for portraits is when like the 45 tilt shift or the 105 comes out. And then the 24 is really for dance floors, which, you know, dance floor strategy in 2020 is going to be different than dance floor strategies before and after. So we'll see about that. But this was definitely taken with a 35.
So talk a little bit as we get into this photo and before you give us the details of the photo. Indian weddings could run a span over several days, no? Or maybe it's one day or a week. I mean, I've heard you tell me that you start a wedding a week before the actual ceremony. Talk a little bit about this specialty and how you approach it.
So, sorry. Most of the Indian weddings that I am photographing are 4 days. Some of my clients only hire me for 1 day, some for 2 or 3. I would say the majority of them end up having me for 4 different days. And all 4 days are not top to bottom shooting. Some of the days are 3 hours of shooting and some of the days are 6 hours of shooting. And so there's definitely a little bit of space, but it's a lot of shooting. And it's a little bit tiring, but you really get to know these families really, really well because you spend so much time with them coming up to the wedding. And they've already, you know, pretty much every part of an Indian wedding is emotional, specifically, most of my clients end up being Gujarati Hindu weddings, and their tradition, I'm Gujarati. And so most of their traditions are traditions I recognize that I've participated in myself and that I connect to. And they're all emotional, all 4 days. And there's different reasons and different ways. Like one of the days is the bride getting Mehndi henna on her hands. And really, you wouldn't think that that's like a particularly emotional thing. Like she's just being decorated and hanging out in a corner. But it ends up being pretty emotional when mom comes to sit next to her and dad, you know, is keeping her company. Like it ends up being a time where they are very focused on each other. And I'm the only witness sometimes because that's not a particularly big event. And yeah, you just bond with these people through the 4 days and it gives you insight into who they are as people.
Beautiful. So dig into this picture a little bit more. What's happening in this particular moment? You said a 35 millimeter lens is what you pulled out of the bag. What's going on here?
So at the end of most South Asian and especially Indian weddings, the bride says her goodbyes. It's the ceremony's over, and traditionally, and this has changed a lot, but the emotions remain because, you know, it's a big life change. Getting married is a big life change. And especially in our culture, you go from like the center of your universe being your parents to now the center of your universe being someone else or multiple more people. And so it's just in every way, it's still a big life change, even if you're not leaving the town that your parents are in, but traditionally it was because you're leaving the town that your parents are in. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the wedding ceremony, the bride walks down the aisle, and it's not what in American culture would be like a celebration with like rice and yay. It's very, it's emotional because she's saying goodbye. And so as she walks down, she hugs her cousins, and she hugs her aunties, and she hugs everybody. And then at the end are her parents, her brother, her sister, who are waiting for her to be the last ones to say goodbye. And so this image is the bride saying goodbye to her mom and dad while her brother and sister look on, and she's holding hands with her future husband, or her current husband, because they just got married. And yeah, this part of the ceremony always gets me. I secretly cry behind the camera, which I feel like I shouldn't tell anyone because I like to pretend I don't have any feelings at a wedding. But I was
going to ask you that anyway, because I was going to ask you, in these moments, do you feel the emotion? Because how could you not? I mean, and even if you're seeing it time and time again, I always find this fascinating because I've seen the work you do. It's just so colorful, and the detail, and just the beautiful, beautiful garments, that are involved in all of this. It's just beautiful tradition, and you capture it very well.
Thank you. For me, from a career standpoint, also, this image was the first one. I've always leaned photojournalist at a wedding. You as much as you can be a photojournalist at a contrived event, where people expect you to take their picture, but documentary. I've always tried to be as hands off as possible, and this image was the first one where I felt like I knew where I was going stylistically.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because I have my parents' wedding album here with me in my apartment, and I go through it, and it was a very traditional way of shooting. But you bring up a great point. It's more about storytelling.
Yeah.
Where back in the day, my parents got married, in the 50s, late 50s. It was all about like, you got to get these shots of this group and this couple and there was never really anything that was very off the beaten path or just journalistically shot. It was all posed. I would think the journalistic approach is huge to what you're doing here.
Yeah. I think there's just too many, even when I got married, looking for a photographer, that was 14 years ago, looking for a photographer, it was really hard to find somebody who took a documentary approach. Pretty much everyone was still doing the portraits are the most important thing. And it's still a wedding. And I say all the time that I'm a commercial wedding photographer. Like, I am shooting a wedding, and while I love the art and the craft of it, there are still things that need to happen because they need to happen. And so am I going to take portraits because portraits need to happen? Yeah. But there's too many emotions and too much tradition and connection at these weddings to ignore that part. So for me, that's the bulk of the shooting.
And what are you recommending to people over a 4-day span of shooting, whether it's 3 hours or 6 hours, like you mentioned? I mean, how are you keeping yourself going physically?
Well, it was easier when I was working out. I haven't been lately, so we're going to have to fix that. Mm-hmm. So one is definitely like being in shape is definitely going to help a lot. The other big thing is having a great staff. You got to have great support people. I have the greatest assistants on the planet. They not only know what lens I need when I need it, or if I need a battery change, all my assistants know that mid-ceremony, I'm going to need a new battery. And so they don't keep it in their pockets until the ceremony, but they're standing next to me when I run out. Like, they just know. They're so good. They're great about technical stuff, but they also keep me alive. Like, on a wedding day, I'm really bad at taking care of myself. Like, I'll forget to eat, drink, everything. But my crew will make sure I eat. They will shove food in my mouth if necessary. It's totally happened before. Right. They make sure I take care of myself, or rather they take care of me because I don't take care of myself. And so having a great crew is really, really helpful.
But that's a testament, though, to your passion for making the best possible pictures, because I know that feeling. I don't shoot a lot of weddings, and I take my hat off to anybody that wants to shoot weddings for a living. Good for you. I always laugh at the last wedding I did. I called downhill weddings because it was my niece and nephew on downhill mountain bikes, and we got married at the top of Killington Mountain, and we rode down to the bottom, and they rode in their wedding outfits, and it was pretty crazy. My kind of wedding. Yeah, to have a great crew around you is one thing, but your passion to kind of stay in it the entire time to try to find new pictures is pretty extraordinary. So what do we got going on here in New York City?
So one thing I really, really love about the weddings I get to shoot is that they're so steeped in tradition and culture. And I really love the culture that I come from, and getting to show the world that culture is nice. Like, photos are definitely part of how we learn about each other, right? So being able to show like my culture and share it with people who aren't in my culture, and hopefully translate it in a way that connects to them even though they're not in my culture is really important to me. And yeah, there was this sign, and these two, I don't know if you remember, like I made a joke about how they came from like technically different ancestral backgrounds, and they started out from different religious backgrounds, but that the biggest challenge that they face is that he's from New York and she's from New Jersey, and that's hard.
That's hard?
Yeah, that's way harder than a religious difference or a cultural difference. New York and New Jersey, oh my God, we love each other, but we like to yell at each other. It's great. But this just brought I love this sign, and I love this couple and how it was perfect for them. And it just brought so much of how I feel about the world together in one image, and how, we just have so much. We may look different, but we have so much to share with each other and so much in common and to celebrate. And yeah, it's been a favorite for a really long time, because I feel like I'm in this photo in a different way.
Well, we love the same, and we love equal. I guess that's the same thing. But yeah. So now, do you plan this picture out, or do you have to be walking around with this couple and you just find the sign, and then all of a sudden, boom, the idea comes, let me just put them on the seat and the bench, which, by the way, I'm digging his shoes. I have a shoe thing, and his outfit in general is phenomenal. But is this serendipity? Do you walk into this moment, or do you plan this moment out?
No, it's definitely part serendipity, but it's preparation meets opportunity. Mm-hmm. So the way that I handle engagement sessions is I tell people, we're not going to float from one location to the next, because it can be very tempting if in New York City for people to say, okay, so we want to do Central Park, and then we want to do South Street Seaport, and then we want to do the High Line, and then we want to do
the Empire State Building. And
yeah. And I'm like, okay, so you just planned a 4-week shoot. And like, that's not going to work. So the way that I handle it is, look, we're going to pick a starting location, and then we're just going to walk, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to find beautiful light, and we're going to find beautiful backgrounds, and we're just going to have fun. Like, we're not going to obsess about the location, because the location almost doesn't matter. You matter. And so I met them at the plaza, and we did what we always do, which is just kind of walk through. So, I start at one end of Central Park and just keep walking and look for light first. Primarily, the thing I look for is light, but definitely, I'm checking out everything around me as we're walking. And something I think that I still sometimes do to myself, but newer photographers always do to themselves, is you really feel like if you're not shooting every minute you're with a client, they might think you don't know what you're doing. And that pressure that you put on yourself makes you miss things. And so once you can tell yourself, like, no, I'm the professional, and I can tell them that, like, right now we're looking for good light. And if there isn't any good light here, that's okay. We just keep walking. And so giving myself the time to just talk to them while we walk and look for stuff, so I can look around, be aware, look for good light, look for good locations, giving yourself that permission can be really helpful. So, I spotted the sign as we were walking and immediately knew we needed to do something. And to go full circle with something from my first image, early on in my career where I thought 1.8 was the only aperture that existed, to shoot something like this in a layer, you really do need to play with your apertures. And I'm pretty sure this was 6.3, not 100% sure, but it would have to be something like somewhere between 5.6 and 7.1. And you'd have to do that because if you're trying to show multiple layers, you need to be able to see them.
Which is nicely done too, though, because you don't sharpen up the letters enough to be distracting and hold you on the left side of the frame, and you're immediately taken to the right side. The fundamentals 101, your eye is attracted to the sharpest part of the frame. So even the brightness of the sign, it's kind of there, but it's not there. And then you go back and investigate it. My question to you is, did you buy a handcrafted leather wallet? That's what I wanted.
I did not.
And again, nothing against her shoes. Of course, it's his shoes that I'm attracted to. And I know our director, Brian, sitting there rolling his eyes right now because he knows I have a shoe fetish. And actually, he calls it a problem, but that I need psychological help for. But you can't ever have enough shoes in my book.
Mike, I have the same problem, right? You've seen my shoes.
Brian, so then Brian's the one with the problem, right? I mean,
yeah. You've seen my shoes at Nikon Theater, right? They're always...
Yeah, they are. And Brian right now is saying, move on to the next frame and stop talking about me. But thank you, Brian. I love this picture. I mean, everything from the color to the position to the angle to the way it just lays out. And what do you got going here? What's going on?
So this is not a drone. I've been asked if this is a drone so many times. It is not a drone. So what it is me being able to trust my gear, like a lot, and having good crew. So basically there was like I said, I handle engagement sessions. We started in one place, we're walking through, and her dress and this tree were just perfect. And so my clients are pretty adventurous, and if I ask them to do something a little bit wild, they'll usually do it. So I asked them to lay in the ivy, and we actually started, and in one of my programs you can see it, but where I like built the connection with them, I started with putting them in the ivy sitting and got them more comfortable until they were comfortable laying down. So once I got them laying down, I pulled a park bench to the edge of the ivy. I stood on the park bench. I held the camera over my body, and I had my I wear like cross straps that cross in the back. And so my assistant grabbed the cross straps to hold me from falling on the clients and murdering them. And I used it from above, kind of blind after I focused with the flip screen, and took 9 images, and then I stitched them together with a 35. So this is 9 images stitched together, shot from directly above them with a 35.
That's amazing. What you just bring up about your assistant holding you back reminds me of a time I actually held Joe McNally, one of our ambassadors' belts, as he's hanging over a bridge in a river, in Philadelphia during one of our shoots. And safety first, right? But this is amazing. So why the 9 images?
So, I really wanted as much of the pink as I could possibly get. And I really, really wanted, this single image on its own was 1/9 of it. And it was pretty, but it wasn't everything I wanted. It was basically the couple on the left of the frame and this like blur of pink on the right, it was good. They would have never known any better. They would have been perfectly happy with the image. But shot with a 35, I would have had to shoot this with like a 10 millimeter. And with one, I don't own one, but B, I said one and then B. 2, I just, the feel of it with the 35 stitched together just made more sense to me. There is distortion, but there's less of it. And the distortion that I did get was actually, it contributes to sending your eye exactly where I wanted it to go. So yeah, I mean, I saw what the image that I wanted, and I used the gear that I had to get it, period. You know,
so I got to ask though, you say most of your clients are game to do what you ask them to do and the crazy things. What happens, and it's got to happen, maybe it doesn't, but I'm guessing it does, when they don't want to do something you really want? What are you doing to convince them to take that chance and lay down in the weeds in a sense, or, you know, bugs crawling on them, whatever it is that's going on in the moment?
It's pretty rare that someone will say no to me, only because I really set the tone. Sorry, a bluebird just flew into the window. I set the tone really, really early with my clients about expectations, not only the ones that they should have from me, but the ones that I have from them, and in what, you know, the adventure that we're going to go on to get images. And I make it clear that, you know, I never want to put them in danger, and they can always say no to me. And I just take no for an answer. It's very rare that I get a no, but if someone says no, then I let them have that, and we can make magic anywhere. So we keep walking.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever get into it? Then I remember shooting a wedding once, and they told me they wanted no pose pictures, right? And I said, I don't know about that. I said, I don't do a ton of weddings, but at the same time, I would think you'd want things to come together. And as it would have it, the father of the groom passed away a short time after the wedding. So going back and forcing them essentially, or kind of begging them to do group shots, became something really important to them, because they had these pictures of the dad then. They wouldn't have had those otherwise. They would have had them in just general, more journalistic type moments. Do you ever have to tell a couple that you're missing it at the boat here if you don't allow me to do something?
Yeah. So usually that happens with engagement photos, because for Indian weddings, actually, they will give me, it's something that I have to manage really, really tightly, is right after the ceremony, there will always be formal photos with all the guests. One time I shot 76 groups in 90 minutes. Yeah. And these are, we're talking like big groups. And to them, 76 groups in 90 minutes sounds like I took too long, but I thought I should reward myself with ice cream for that.
It doesn't sound long to me. It sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah. 76 groups is a lot. So they're, you know, when it comes to the wedding day, they're always really, really good about making sure that we take groups. Something that I have not done before that this year I will do. My uncle passed away last year, and we, you know, he was an uncle I was very close to, and we looked for photos of him for the funeral and just to put around the house. And we were surprised at how few photos of him alone there were that weren't like passport or businessy. And so something I'm making myself do at all weddings going forward is all the parents and grandparents, I want to take individual photos. Not to be used in the event of their death. It's not like a morbid thing. It's just, you know, they need to exist. You need to have those. They're important. So I'm gonna make sure that I do that going forward. But for engagement photos, couples will say like, we don't want anything posed. And the reality is, while I'm not a strict poser, you do need direction, because you're also not models. Like you're not like normally in the habit of walking around Central Park and being adorable on a bench. Like I'm going to let you be natural. And I'm going to find ways to make you feel comfortable being natural. But some level of participation on my part is just part of my job. And educating them on that is really what they need. They need a reminder that like, I don't expect them to be models to get the work that I get, that all of my clients need a little bit of assistance, and I'm here to give it to them, make it easy.
Beautiful. And thank you for sharing the technique on this, because when you said you got up on a bench, it looks like you're up on a 20-foot ladder. And I think the illusion you created by shooting the 9 pictures is pretty amazing. So let's move on here. Group shots at a wedding. As we speak about group shots, talk about that. This looks like a TV show. This looks like, you know, it's the promo picture for some big reality TV show. What's going on here? And again, talk about what it's like to have to deal with this many people in the same photo.
So most of these people, I will tell you, were super lovely and cooperative. There was
Most?
yeah. There was one in particular that didn't want to cooperate. It was funny because all he had to do was stand, like just standing. But, you know, I think Indian weddings are so long that all of these people have been up since 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. So understandably, they're a little grumpy now and they just want to go have fun. And so I understand why someone would be like, oh, I don't want to do this. On the other hand, bridal party, you have one job, take a good picture. So you're going to have to just participate. So this is in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Philadelphia. And the doorman there does not like me anymore. He might have once. But after this, I don't think he's a fan.
I can't imagine anybody not liking you, Charmi, but continue.
Well, you might not like me either if you were the doorman and I was blocking the entire door. So the only way for me to shoot, this is shot with a 28-1.8. And the only way for me to shoot this well with the 28-1.8 was to shoot it from the vestibule. And so I had all the doors like open, but I was right in the middle of the vestibule. So anybody trying to come in would have to go around me, and he wasn't happy about that. But this bride, top to bottom, one of the most elegant human beings, like just like a really warm, amazing human being. And I find that when you're welcomed, I mean, everyone's an emotional shooter to some degree, right? I always want to do my best, but I find that when like I've also fallen in love with a client a little bit, I want to go the extra 12 miles. And so just knowing what an amazing human being she was, I wanted her to have something just epic with her bridal party because she's so close to all of these people. So I knew we were going to do this shot early on. I set myself up in the vestibule. My assistant had one flash with a grid on it, and she went from person to person lighting them. And then I put those together. And a side note that the bottom of the bride's dress was also treated like an extra person. So it got its own light. But really posing was the big challenge. And I think that, you know, when you're planning something like this, it's really careful to be aware of not only the people that you're working with who, you know, are tired and can be difficult, but also the staff that's at that venue. And so, you know, instead of bothering the doorman right away, because I knew he was going to dislike me because it takes time to take a shot like this, right?
How long? How long are you in this moment, you think?
Shooting it probably took like 1 minute each for all 22 frames.
So you're talking about a half hour solid, easy.
Yeah. We were in the lobby for like 30 minutes. First just like taking chairs from different tables because I wanted like good layered heights. I didn't want it to be just a top layer and a bottom layer. And then getting everybody in position, making sure that they didn't look super sloppy, and perfecting that. And then the bride wanted to take a serious one, a funny one, and one where they were looking at each other. So 3 of the very complicated multi-shot shots. But this is definitely one of the most fun. And it's definitely like my personality is in here. I love drama, and I love, I feel like even though this is very monochromatic, there's so much color in this and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, there's so much about this picture I love, not only just the location, but the treatment of it and the technique to get to it. That's obviously, again, a testament to how hard and you're going to work, especially you're tired too at the end of this day as I look around. But I can't not look at everybody's face. I can't not ask what each individual story is. And it's done, I guess the word I would say is elegantly. You know, as serious as they are, there's a lot of elegance to this picture. There's a lot of character to each of the people. And it's funny when you read each of the different faces, you could see a bit of the mood that these people were in. But certainly, again, to be able to do this, I think in the wedding moment,
Yeah.
when time is of the essence. And I mean, again, it's pretty insane. Now, I want to get into this picture because I know this picture says a lot, and there was a big story behind this, and it went viral. Talk about what it is, talk about how you made it, and what the meaning behind all of it is.
So this is Amit and Adi. I had actually reached out to them because I wanted to make sure, my portfolio wasn't really LGBTQ heavy. And I wanted to make sure that I had a little bit more representation so that people would know they are safe at my business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had reached out to them and said like, hey, I'd love to take, photos of you guys for this reason. I shared the reason, and they were both like, yeah, that would be awesome. But then we like lost touch and people got busy. Then they decided to get married. So they remembered that I had called them, and they were like, listen, we're getting married at a temple. And I was like, what? That's awesome. Because temples are a little bit conservative and traditional. And this is what people of my generation of Indian immigrants kids have always wanted is to be as inclusive as possible and just love. And yeah, so they were able to make that happen. And I photographed their ceremony right before this. They had taken photos with all their friends and family, and then they were ready to leave. And I insisted, I just saw this in my head and was like, no, you can't leave. I need you to do this. And so I set them up a little bit, asked them to just breathe and enjoy each other's company for a second with their eyes shut. And I had their friends throw petals at them. And we ended up with this. And it was definitely the Z7, not the Z6, and a 35.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's everything about it to me. Just you're attracted to this photo, the tonality of it, the background, the lack of detail in the background, but just enough to be interesting, to see everything going on. How and why does a picture like this go viral?
I think it helps that the image hits the technical notes, with the symmetry and the color and the tones. And I think that helps. But I also think we're in an era where we're really trying to embrace each other and support each other. And I think that this was a big step to see a gay wedding happen in a temple. And I think for a lot of people, it gave people so much hope and not even just, my gay friends felt hope. I think a whole generation of people just felt like, look, we're moving forward. We're getting to the place where we're good. Like we all just are letting people be who they are and loving them for who they are. And I think that hope that it brought people, the common, I think it was, as far as we can tell, it was the first Hindu ceremony for gay people to take place in a temple. And so I think seeing a first like that just made people feel just really positive. And I think that just made people share it like crazy.
And I know this may be an obvious question. You talk about how people felt about it. How do you feel about it? Well, when you're a photographer and you create something that is different, or it's a picture you've never made before, how does Charmi Peña feel about a picture like this when she sees it on the back of the camera?
I think that I knew it was special the second I took it. I have an annual trip that I take with my sisters. And the five of us, well, they're my cousins, but yeah. My sister and my cousins, like we all go away together every year. And I had cut a day off of that trip and rescheduled my flight so that I could be here for this wedding. And when I took this photo, I went directly to the airport to go join my sisters. And on the plane, I was editing this. And I purchased the internet so that I could send it to the guys. And I didn't know it would get the kind of attention it did, but I knew that I was super, super proud of it. And immediately that it was definitely, like I said before, I see myself in this because I just think that like supporting other people and being inclusive is so important. And yeah, I just the second I took it, I knew it was important. I just didn't realize how important it would be to other people.
Now, I want to take a couple of seconds before we come back full screen to enjoy this and let everybody enjoy it who's tuning in. It is a very special picture. I think it's beautifully done. Certainly has all the passion that you bring, you know, to photography. And again, acceptance of the times is so important. And I think this picture down the road is even going to be larger than you imagine it is right now, because of its meaning and everything that it brings to the table. With your expertise. So let me stop sharing and bring you back full screen. There you are. I can't thank you enough for giving us your time this morning. I always like to give a special thanks for taking the time to cull down your career's worth of work into a small package of images. I've actually had comments from people, we love the Creators Hour, this is all great, but it's not fair what you do, so why don't you role reverse and, you know, you have to pick 6 of your favorite pictures or 7. So I know it's not an easy task to do, so thank you for doing that. But I think this told a great story of your journey, you know, from that very first picture you took to this very last picture we showed, the growth in your talent and what you learned and how you apply it, and certainly along the way becoming a strong businesswoman to keep running this business as you are, and now coming out of the pandemic to just sort of reinvent yourself as to how this happens now. You know, again, most of the weddings I shoot require one day, you know, but then again, I don't at all profess to be a wedding photographer. It's just not, you know, I like birds in the backyard. That kind of turns me on. And, you know, sports and people and all that kind of stuff. But the pressure of weddings, I think, especially over 4 days, has got to be tough. So thank you for the time you've given us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's fun.
So just so everybody can follow your work, you are Charmi Peña on Instagram, just Charmi, no space Peña, just all straight up.
Yeah.
CHARMIPENA.
Yeah.
Right? Check out Instagram. Any other places you want people to check out your work?
Nah, Instagram's definitely a big one. And I did put a lot of effort during the pandemic into making my new website. So go look at it.
So just Google Charmi Peña weddings and you'll come up. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Charmi, again, thank you for your time. We really want to inspire you and educate you during these times, especially in the pandemic, coming out of it. Who knows where we're going to go? But the Creators Hour has been very special with these interviews, and we thank you guys for tuning in. Check out NikonUSA.com/Creators Hour so you can see some of the past interviews we've done and check out the schedule as we move forward. And we may continue this on, who knows, through the month of August. But thank you guys for tuning in. Get out there, shoot some pictures, be inspired, share them with us. And for Nikon, I am Mike Corrado. Everybody out there, be safe, and we'll see you soon.